person's underlying health has something to do with how bad any kind of illnesses may be going to affect them. So if it's someone that already has other severe medical issues, it may be much more severe.
I'm Susan Goss, and as a seasoned therapist of more than 15 years, I'm honored to have had the opportunity to gain so much wisdom from so many people and love passing that knowledge on to others. So join me and some of my favorite friends as we share some tangible truths with you. Hey guys, welcome back to the Tangible Truth Podcast. I'm Susan Goss, and I am just always thrilled when I have this guest with me for the Tangible Truth Podcast, and it is my husband, Dr. Steve Goss. Hey, Steve.
Hi, Susan.
Wasn't that formal? Dr. Steve Goss.
Brother. Yeah.
But Steve, honestly, I'm always so thrilled to have you. And I want you to know that this is the truth. I was at Ouachita this last week for the Mary Schamberger vocal competition, and it was wonderful. But I pulled in. It was pouring down rain. I walked in. I was shaking off the rain and everything. And the first man that I saw that's our age said, "Susan, I've just got to tell you," after he hugged my neck and we greeted each other, he said, I may be the only man that listens to your podcast. And I said, well, I hope not. But he was saying it as a big compliment.
Sure.
And I took it that way. And he said, one of my favorite guests when you have him on is Steve.
Oh.
I just love it when he's on the podcast. And I said, I am so grateful that you listen, and I will pass that on to Steve.
Well, that's very kind.
Isn't that kind?
Yes.
So I want to tell you that. And I didn't tell you when I got home. I waited till the podcast.
You did.
So
You surprised me with it.
I know, because you cannot take a compliment. So that's why I'm saying it publicly. So anyway, I'm very proud to have you. And listeners, this is the month of November, and it's the month of Thanksgiving. And of course, we want to acknowledge just being thankful. But I want to tell you, I'm kind of doing a twist on the month of November, and I pulled Steve in because, yes, he is a physician. That's why I formally introduced him that way as Dr. Steve Goss, because I'm going super practical on this podcast. I'm really serious about going practical because I thought, a lot of times, wherever we are, sometimes we're with family, sometimes we're serving others a meal at Thanksgiving that are not with family. Sometimes we're with neighbors and friends. And no matter where we are, it's just good knowledge to have, even if we're educating others. And it's not just about Thanksgiving, it's our health in general, about leftovers. Here we go, practical. But leftovers.
I'm hungry already.
I know, but we all, especially during the holiday seasons, no matter if it's Thanksgiving or Christmas or whenever it is, we generally always have leftovers if we're having it at our own home. But it's good if you don't have Thanksgiving in your home and you're with others to educate others, or, like I said, if you're serving or helping others, to know about how long do we keep leftovers? How long do they last and are healthy for us to consume? Because they can turn bad quicker than others think. I'll open up my refrigerator sometime. I'll be totally transparent. I'll go, Steve, this looks like a science experiment. I mean, it truly does. And so we have to ditch them. Or we'll be out at a restaurant and we generally say, yeah, we'll take it to go. And we always forget about those. We rarely eat leftovers. And so I'm always throwing those away.
Yeah, first of all, if we remember to bring them home, often we walk out and still leave them on the table. But if we get them home, we'll put them in the refrigerator and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and we don't get back to them in time often.
It's so, so true. It's hilarious. And then expired dates, we're just going really practical for a while. So I'm going to punt to you and start there.
Great. Well, a disclaimer first, I'm not in the food industry.
True.
I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist. So, I'm not used to counseling people about what to do with your food and your leftovers.
No, but let me jump in.
Yeah.
I ask you specifically, that is correct. He's not a dietitian, but you are a physician. And what you do get a lot is food poisoning, not you yourself.
Yeah.
You've had it a couple of times. I've had it. Our son, who is a musician, every time he leaves the country, he tends to get it. But you treat that in your practice, and food poisoning is related to what we're talking about.
Yes.
So that's why I specifically ask you, because food poisoning is the real deal.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have probably been sick from it. It's very uncomfortable with vomiting or diarrhea and sweats and fever and everything else. But, most people recover from that, often pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of depends on what toxin off of what food, which bacteria that happens from. So, and then there's traveler's diarrhea, as you're out of the country and not sure about water sources and those sorts of things. That's a little bit different topic, but still there are some bacteria that can be very problematic, can be worse. It's still a low percentage, but a few of those can produce toxins that are much more virulent and can cause a lot more damage. And most of those actually are in kids. It more often happens in children, where some of the worst side effects or consequences can occur, but it can still be for adults too. And of course, the person's underlying health has something to do with how bad any kind of illness is maybe going to affect them. So if it's someone that already has other severe medical issues, or they're more elderly and, immune systems and everything aren't as strong, it may be much more severe, and it may not be the actual food poisoning that's going to cause problems, but that may then affect their heart disease or their kidney disease or whatever else it might be. Mm-hmm. And that then becomes the predominant problem, one of their existing chronic illnesses, but the food poisoning made it worse. So again, a good reason to be careful. And so, coming up with the seasons, there's going to be a lot of great food. Usually we don't eat all the turkey at a sitting, or all the mashed potatoes or all the sweet potatoes or whatever else it may be. And so just be careful with that. And so there's kind of food preparation that you need to be careful with. And then there's kind of food handling and then food storage. So there's several steps to it all, and there can be some hiccups anywhere along the way. Mm-hmm. And in between there's the cooking. Everything needs to be cooked thoroughly also. So several steps for everyone to be careful about. And I guess maybe since this is a recurring theme for us in medicine, it should be at least, is strict hand washing. Good hand washing is critical in hospitals and in clinics and, in medical care settings, to make sure we don't spread disease from one patient to another or from a patient to yourself. So good hand washing is something, we should have drilled into us as medical professionals, but good hand washing is critical, in food handling too. It's busy, I don't want to get too graphic in this, but, wash your hands after you started doing some food preparation. You got to run to the bathroom, or you got to change a diaper, or you got to do something else. Make sure you're kind of washing your hands before and after preparing things, because that then cuts down the spread of some bacteria that may be present on some of the foods that are going to get killed during proper cooking. But, you can spread them then with your hands, and often, you just need to be very careful about that. So everyone just needs to be really conscious about keeping their hands very clean while they cook. And there can be different interruptions like I'm talking about. So make sure you kind of wash your hands before and after activities or other things that might contaminate yourself. I would say one more thing. So having clean hands is one thing. The next step is then as you're beginning to prepare the food. So, if you're preparing the turkey, a chicken, meats, whatever else, you just need to be careful about surfaces that you've prepared things on that can then leave bacteria there on the surface of a counter where you've been preparing the meats or other raw vegetables or whatever else. Before you plop something else on there to start preparing, you need to make sure you thoroughly clean those surfaces in between. Mm-hmm. So you've kind of worked with your turkey, we'll say, but now you're going to, start working with lettuce and greens and preparing a salad or whatever else. Make sure that you've cleaned those surfaces very well so you don't cross-contaminate between different food items.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Because everything does matter as far as cleanliness goes, because it can cross-contaminate, can it? And, you don't think about that. I mean, You're just doing it. but you have to think about all of those different steps. Now, I'm a big hand washer anyway,
Right.
As you know. And so I just wash all the time. I'm just always washing, which is a good thing. But you just have to think about it intentionally. But I'm not OCD about it. It's just, I just do it.
Right. In that regard, what all are you doing with your hands while you're preparing? Likely everyone's going to be wiping them off on a towel or something. You get stuff on your hands and you're wiping it off on a towel to do something else. And so, you clean the surface and then you wipe your hands off or wipe the area down with a towel you've been just wiping your hands off with, just to get kind of food debris off. So just be careful, just use common sense. And if you've kind of, quote, soiled one towel, then, maybe use paper towels so that you can throw them away in between different food preparations. So just be careful. Bacteria are smart, and they're going to take an opportunity wherever they can.
I don't know what I'd do without my paper towels.
True.
Handy paper towels.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Now that's a lot that we've discussed only on cleanliness. Not even gotten into leftovers yet. And so that's just prepping for the meal, which I didn't even know we were going to do that much prepping for the meal. I love it that we did, though, because prepping for the meal, if you do that properly, the leftovers can stay in the refrigerator actually just a wee bit longer if the prepping is done properly on some foods.
Right.
Not all foods, but on some foods. So, listeners, I told you this was going to be practical, but I was asked to do this by someone. I think it's a great idea. And so we're going to wrap up for this episode, but we're going to jump right into episode 2 and talk about leftovers practices. We love you, listeners, and we look forward to you joining us again. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Tangible Truth Podcast, part of the KLRC Podcast Network.